Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. On a spring Tuesday afternoon in Chicago, the sky was covered in a gray veil that darkened the facades of the skyscrapers. Michigan Street, usually crowded, hummed with an incessant noise, distant horns, hurried conversations, the scraping of soles of shoes on wet concrete. Emily Carter moved slowly, leaning on her right crutch. Each step was a painstaking effort, a silent battle. Her left leg, still fragile and painful, barely supported her weight. At 24, she had spent the last 6 months relearning how to walk, between physiotherapy sessions and long, sleepless nights. Her hazel eyes scanned the sidewalk, searching for the best place to rest her crutch, while her hands, thin and slightly trembling, clung tightly to the worn handle. The pain was still there, diffuse, dull, but Emily refused to give in. She moved forward, motivated by a clear, luminous dream. She had just spent 4 hours in the university library, immersed in her psychology books. Far from the noise of the world, she had found refuge in the pages where neuroscience and humanity intertwined. Her secret dream, to become a therapist, to help wounded souls, those who, like her, had passed through the shadows before finding the light again. On his backpack hung a small photo of his smiling parents and a quote scribbled by hand on a piece of paper. Strength comes not from physical ability, but from an indomitable will. Around her, the city busied itself, indifferent. Passers-by milled about, glued to their phones, their thoughts elsewhere. A few shifty glances, sometimes a look of pity, rarely a gesture of help. Emily knew well that the loneliness of weakness is often heavier than pain itself. As she prepared to cross an intersection, a young man approached. Tyler Reynolds. Dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, his gleaming watch caught the dull daylight. His bearing betrayed an almost arrogant confidence, that of those who believe the world is theirs. He noticed Emily, her crutch, the slowness of her steps. Irritation rose in him, palpable in the clench of his jaw. The sidewalk seemed to have narrowed, forcing him to slow down. Without thinking, without a word, in a brutal and mean gesture, Tyler lifted his foot and sharply kicked Emily's crutch. The shock completely destabilized her. A gasp caught in her breath, a muffled cry. She swayed, searching for support that no longer existed, then fell heavily onto the cold concrete, her leg aching all the way down to her back. All around, the world seemed to stop. Only Tyler's contemptuous laughter echoed as he walked away, sure of his impunity. Around Emily, time seemed to stand still for a few moments. Passers-by, initially surprised by the sudden fall, remained paralyzed, as if frozen in a scene they didn't know what to do with. Some put down their bags, others slowed down, casting glances of mixed horror, embarrassment, or indifference. A man in a dark suit, in a hurry, quickly looked away, his face tense, preferring not to get involved. A mother tugged at her child's hand, urging him forward without looking. A young woman on rollerblades stopped for a moment, then continued running, unable to do anything more. Emily, lying on the cold concrete, her head bowed, felt the sting of tears threatening to fall. She held them back, clenching her fists, more out of pride than willpower. It wasn't just the physical pain that assailed her, but this humiliation, this brutal contempt, which awakened all the buried wounds within her. She saw those furtive glances in the street, those veiled or direct words, that feeling of being invisible or a burden to bear. This attack was only an echo of all those silent humiliations accumulated over the months. Her world was collapsing a little more with each passing moment, but she refused to give in. Suddenly, a soft, calm voice broke the heavy silence. "Are you doing well?" Emily looked up and saw a man approaching slowly, unhurriedly, with genuine attention in his eyes. His salt and pepper hair, carefully styled, framed a face imbued with calm and kindness. This man's name was James Whitman. He was in his 60s and the respected owner of a chain of hospitals in the city. His reputation extended far beyond his business. James was a quiet activist, deeply committed to the defense of disability rights, motivated by a personal story. His younger sister had been born with cerebral palsy. He knelt beside Emily, gently assessing her condition. "Don't move too quickly, take your time." Carefully, he reached out his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Emily took it. Thanks to its reassuring solidity, she managed to sit up, still feeling the stabbing pain in her leg. James offered her his arm, and she accepted. Together, they began to walk slowly, away from the hustle and bustle of the street. On the walk to her apartment, they didn't speak much, but James's presence brought Emily an unexpected comfort, a reminder that despite the cruelty of the world, there were still souls capable of gentleness and listening. When they arrived at her house, James made sure she could sit comfortably, before promising her that he would do everything to ensure she would never again face this kind of violence alone. That day, amidst the urban cold, a spark of hope lit in Emily's heart. In the days following the attack, Emily felt a new energy growing within her. The physical pain, though still present, gradually faded before the determination burning in his eyes. She knew she couldn't remain silent, as it risked letting this injustice be buried in oblivion. Every afternoon, she met James Whitman in the small living room of her apartment. The old man, both patient and firm, listened attentively to Emily's stories, her fears, her hopes, but also her anger. James, who had seen many battles in his life, was deeply touched by the quiet strength of this young woman. He promised to accompany her, to use everything at his disposal to ensure that justice was done. Thanks to his contacts in the hospital and community sectors, James quickly established contact with the relevant authorities. He requested that the neighborhood surveillance videos be reviewed, particularly those from the day of the incident. Within days, Tyler Reynolds' face was clearly identified. This arrogant young executive, who thought he could act with impunity, was now exposed to public view. But Emily didn't want this to be just a punishment. "It's not just him," she explained to James. "It's a whole system, a whole mentality. I want it to serve something bigger." Together, they imagined the creation of an association, Not Without Us, a carefully chosen name, which reminded us that people with disabilities no longer wanted to be ignored or excluded. The aim of this organization would be to raise public awareness of respect for people with disabilities, to combat violence, whether physical or psychological, and to promote real inclusion in all aspects of social life. The following weeks were intense. Emily, supported by James, conducted numerous interviews and met with associations, institutions, and the media. Her story became a symbol. For Tyler, the news came as a blow. He was fired from his job, a decision taken quickly by his company's management, eager to avoid a scandal. At the same time, legal proceedings were launched against him for minor assault. The case garnered national media attention, highlighting the often invisible problems of people with disabilities. On the day of the public hearing, in a packed room, Emily spoke. Her voice, calm but firm, resonated with an intensity that shocked the audience. That kick wasn't just an isolated act of violence. It was a symbol of the indifference and contempt that thousands of people experience every day, in the streets, at work, in their lives. "I refuse to be a silent victim. I'm here to put an end to this violence, so that the dignity of everyone is respected, without exception." Faced with this strength, this unshakable dignity, Tyler felt the weight of his guilt like never before. He understood that his actions, beyond an impulsive act, had injured far more than a leg. It had struck hope, confidence, resilience. As the months passed, Emily Carter's life changed. Little by little, she regained not only partial use of her leg, but, more importantly, a self-confidence she thought she had lost forever. The association, Not Without Us, gained notoriety. What began as a small initiative, driven by the will of two determined souls, became a powerful movement, capable of making the voices of people with disabilities heard throughout the country. Through hard work, intelligent awareness campaigns, and sincere, human communication, the association secured significant funding. Partnerships with institutions, schools, and businesses were formed. Educational programs were implemented to combat prejudice from an early age. Emily, now a renowned speaker, traveled from city to city, sharing her story, her struggles, and her victories. Her voice, laced with emotion and strength, touched hearts and awakened consciences. Meanwhile, Tyler Reynolds was undergoing a difficult but essential personal journey. Broken by the fall of his status and aware of the gravity of his actions, he chose not to escape reality. Through an awareness program launched by Not Without Us, he met several people with disabilities. He listened to their stories, sometimes painful, often courageous. Each testimony shook his certainties, challenged his prejudices. It was a slow process, marked by shame, questioning, and finally, understanding. One day, during a conference organized by the association, Tyler took a step that no one expected. He went on stage, in front of an attentive and moved audience, and addressed a public apology to Emily. "Emily," he said, his voice trembling, "I can't undo what I did, or the pain I caused you. But I want to offer you my sincere apologies. What you do for so many people is admirable, and I want to learn to be better, to be different." Their eyes met, not in confrontation, but in a mutual recognition of how far they had come. They never crossed paths as before, on the street or by chance, but something had changed within them, a lesson in humility, an openness to change. Today, Emily Carter is a respected voice, a driving force for profound change in society. His fight has opened eyes to the realities of disability, broken taboos, and inspired a generation to act with more compassion and fairness. All this was born from a simple kick, a violent and cruel gesture, but which triggered a wave of solidarity, awareness, and above all, transformation. Because sometimes the greatest strength comes from the deepest wounds.